Hey, listeners, this is Justin, and welcome to Film Fanatics. This month we're doing Disney CGI month, and this time around I brought Meet the Robinsons, Joe brought Finding Nemo, Dan Tangled, which I have polarizing opinions of, and our listener's choice was The Incredibles. So quite a bit to cover this time around, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, should be good.
Definitely.
So let's have you kick it off with Meet the Robinsons, your pick.
All right.
Go ahead.
Meet Lewis, voiced by Daniel Hansen, a curious young inventor who spends most of his time tinkering around the orphanage he resides. His inventions draw the intrigue of the villainous, or seemingly so, bowler hat guy, voiced by Steven Anderson. Lewis is whisked off by the protective Wilbur, voiced by Wesley Singerman, to the future where Lewis encounters the quirky Robinson family along the journey of restoring order. Tom Selleck, Tom Kenny, Adam West, and of course, much to Dan's chagrin, Harlan Williams lend their voices in supporting roles. I was trying to think of one that sort of went against the grain for Disney CGI month, and I thought this one was a little bit underrated. And I think that's a pity. Now, admittedly, I think Meet the Robinsons certainly shows its age in terms of the animation. The beginning's not great by CGI standards, but I think once we pick up in the future, it shows it had some promise. And I think a lot of the wonder is present here. I think one really interesting observation we had while we were watching it was that a lot of the things it was trying to do and say were also being emulated by Tomorrowland, and I would argue Meet the Robinsons did it better.
Oh yeah, this is like the solid version of Tomorrowland.
It really is. Like they actually get there.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yes.
Yeah, they really do.
Yeah, true.
They get there, and it's like, oh, wow, so this is legitimately Tomorrowland.
Not for like the last 30 minutes, Joe. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, Tomorrowland sucked. Sorry.
But no.
I liked it, but not as much as
it has its moments.
Yeah.
But for me, the reason I really do love this movie is the message, which I think is a big thing for kids' movies. And I think this one has a very unique one, trying to express that it's okay to fail, but it's not okay to give up. And I think that's something that we as people tend to forget sometimes. And I think that's a really nice and smart reminder. And I think they make it work, even tying it at the end fairly lovingly to Walt Disney himself. But I was pretty happy with this one, despite some flaws. I think there are a couple moments where I'm not quite sure it's paying homage I should say, a little too much, that sort of forgets to establish its own identity. And it doesn't detract, but it doesn't like get anything out of it either. But for me, I leave this one with a B-.
Oh. All right, Joe?
Well, I'm glad that you brought this one because it's one that I actually never saw before. And I don't hear it talked about too much, but the little I do hear is that people did seem to like it.
It's fairly warm.
Mm-hmm. Like, I've never heard anybody say anything bad about it. And I think I avoided it because for some reason I thought it was like some sort of version of the Swiss Family Robinson. Which was like, so I was like, I don't know if it was something I really wanted to say.
Yeah.
Disney 70s classic.
You know, I was like, oh, maybe that's what it is, but apparently not at all. So yeah, it was kind of a good surprise. I actually thought that it was, tackling some smart stuff with time travel. I think that it did that well for the most part. I see what you're saying. The animation might be a little dated. I actually felt like the scale, maybe they didn't put as much budget into it as some other features. It didn't really feel like a Disney level caliber animation.
Well, no.
So I could see that being kind of an identity there that's a bit off. But I did like the characters in the story. I think one of the best things about it is actually all the side characters of the Robinsons themselves.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Which I would argue is one of the flaws of the movie because we only get to see a little bit of them. Like, I think that's almost the selling point, and we don't really get to meet the Robinsons too much. And
Until like halfway into the movie.
We do, but it's only a little bit, and that's not what it's about. And I guess you could argue we kind of get the heart and soul of the Robinsons by the end of the movie, but that's a plot twist, which actually I thought was pretty good. I thought the twist involving what the moral of the story was, what was going on, and the villain was pretty good too. However, I think that the scale of the movie isn't quite as big as it could be because it does take like this really dark sci-fi turn, which was interesting, but by the time it starts, it's pretty much over. Yeah. And like, well, that almost didn't need to be there. And I see why they wanted to make it more exciting, but in either case, though, I thought it was pretty decent overall. Glad I saw it. Maybe not one of the Disney greats, but definitely a good movie.
It's worthy.
I'm a little higher than you, actually. Leave it with a B.
Okay. Yeah, Justin, I'm actually surprised about your B-. I've always loved this movie. It's kind of like, to me, the hidden Disney gem of the last 15 years.
Interesting.
Nobody talks about it, and nobody really talked about it when it was out either.
Mm-hmm.
That always surprised me.
It was like, well, there's a Disney movie out, but then the last, like, 4 leading up to that was like, Chicken Little and, all of these just not great movies.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And the animation is what it is for 2007. I mean, even though, they own Pixar, I mean, their animation in the CGI realm has always sort of been behind what their contemporaries at Pixar were doing. And I think I would still agree with that now. I mean, maybe not with Zootopia, but
Well,
I mean...
I don't know.
It takes a while to pull all that off.
Talk about it later, but I mean, Frozen was pretty visually awesome.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
It was. But that was probably the first one that I can say could compare, animation-wise, with a Pixar.
Maybe.
Right.
But... I mean, I think the movie's touching. I think it's very funny. My favorite character is the frog lounge singer, who, I mean, if this movie came out today and was a hit, he would have his own short, which I wish that would happen because he was great. I think it really gets the emotions of being in foster care very right. The biggest problem for me was the lightning fast humor, the breakneck pace of the dialogue. I think it tries a little bit too hard to be like, oh, we're hip, let's be the fast-talking movie. And I don't know if that was...
It didn't have to machine gun.
Yeah, it didn't. And I don't know if they were sort of competing with something. I mean, I don't think the dialogue in, say, Shrek is that snappy and quick.
No.
So I don't know if they were just trying to up the game or something, but...
If anything, it's a little dry by comparison.
Well, yeah, I think I think they're trying a little too hard to be... in your face and too funny. I think movies do that more now, like Penguins of Madagascar, for example. Mm-hmm. But back then, that wasn't really the norm.
No.
And I don't think they really broke ground with that one. But no, I've always really liked this movie. I give it an A-.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I think the villain's great. I think the story is great. The time travel stuff works very well. Joe, you mentioned that. Mm-hmm. I mean, I suppose I do agree that we don't necessarily spend enough time with the characters.
No, but when you have a cast list of...
I was going to say, it's a big
20.
family.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing I'd like to point out, is that I appreciate that this movie does not have famous actors in the leading roles.
No.
Couple of the side characters.
A little bit, yeah.
But even then, not many.
No.
2 or 3 leads are all... I mean, Justin said their names. I never heard of them.
Yeah.
Might be one reason one is a big of a hit.
Well, maybe not, and I think that's sad. Because, back in the day, nobody,
Brand association didn't have to be the be-all, end-all.
Well, yeah, until Robin Williams did the genie. I mean,
yeah.
It wasn't like a standard. Now it is, and it's okay. I mean, it has its place. It can be done certainly very well. I think we can all agree Ellen DeGeneres does a great job with Dory, and
Absolutely.
Obviously we'll talk about that next with Finding Nemo, but, Buzz and Woody, I can't think of anybody else doing them.
Great duo.
But, I don't know, there's something kind of charming about the fact that these are not recognizable voices. Joe, maybe that's partially why Princess of the Frog didn't do as well either.
Maybe.
Because, I mean, I love Anika Noni Rose. She was in Dreamgirls, but, like, household name she's not.
Sadly.
So, yeah, I don't know. I always thought that was sort of charming about this movie as well.
It's a good point.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I wish I liked this more than I did, just because I think those flaws are really noticeable. Like, if we were going off of personal enjoyment, I'd probably be right with you on A-. Mm-hmm. Like, I think it's fun. I was never bored. But I also think, as sort of the trying to appease so many different genres that are well known in the realm of science fiction, that sort of compromises its own, I think hurts it a little bit too.
Yeah.
It does, but at the same time, name me the Disney movie that doesn't ape from something. You might be at a loss.
Probably.
So, I mean, okay, this was their homage to 50s sci-fi movies.
Which is
Okay.
fine.
It's
Yeah.
okay, right?
Yeah.
All right, well, let's talk about Finding Nemo. Joe, your pick, and what a great one.
Indeed.
Well, I thought
And timely.
it made sense.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Well, some of you guys may know that Finding Nemo is the 2003 animated comedy adventure produced by what company?
Pixar.
That's correct. And it voices some people we like Albert Brooks and Ellen DeGeneres, and Willem Dafoe's even there.
Yeah, true.
It's disturbing fish.
Brad Garrett.
Brad Garrett's a good fish.
Janny. Many people.
There's a lot of people in here that are actually pretty awesome.
Yeah.
That's what Pixar usually does.
Yeah.
Speaking of one-on voice casts.
Yeah, true.
Another thing they do. Basically, it tells the story of the overprotective clownfish named Marlin, that's Albert Brooks, who, along with a regal tang named Dory, who recently got her own movie, search for the abducted son Nemo along the way to Sydney Harbor. Now, also, Marlin has to learn the risks that come to terms with Nemo taking care of himself and getting over his own fears of the ocean, which is something we can all relate to, I'm sure. Now, Nemo also has to deal with confinement where he has to escape from a fish tank and a dental office, and that's where Willem Dafoe's character comes in.
Indeed.
Now, I admit I didn't see this one when it first came out. I kind of avoided it because I thought it was a little too overhyped. It was a little bit intimidating, like everyone loved it, and just kind of became annoying, I guess. One of those many situations.
No, it did.
But finally I saw it years later, and I enjoyed it. But I never really had much of a desire to watch it again. And I did for the podcast, and I'm glad that I did by this pick. So, I think with Pixar, you got some of the standard stuff. You've got great animation, great performances, everything you'd expect. And it's tied together with good characters and a good universal moral. And I don't think it tackles things quite as well, maybe as subtly or with as much scope as, say, something like Toy Story. But it's still very well executed for what it is. I think it's handled basically perfectly. And I leave it with an A.
Well, I've always loved this movie as well. And I did see it when it was first out. I've actually seen all the Pixar films in theaters. And I think for the time, this was really the first time that Pixar made a movie probably more for kids than adults. I think they usually run a good balance between the two. The Toy Story movies are a great example of that.
Absolutely.
And I would say Monsters, Inc. is as well. I guess Bug's Life is a little bit more kid-friendly. But Nemo really is at its heart a kids movie, and I think why parents appreciate it, probably in a different way than they appreciate the Toy Story movies, is because it is maybe reminds them of the great animated movies of their youth. Now, if it's people our age, that could be Beauty and the Beast or Great Mouse Detective or many movies like that.
Fox and the Hound.
Fox and the Hound, sure.
Yeah.
People with maybe 10-year-olds when the movie was out, it may remind them of movies from the 70s that they really enjoyed. I think this is a classic animated film. It hits all the notes, and it hits an emotional punch that Pixar is, of course, known for. The voice work is great. The characters are great. The world is great. These are all things that are littered throughout every Pixar movie. And for me, this is one of the best. It's an A+.
Well, I'll try to find something in here that you guys haven't reiterated, but you guys haven't mentioned. But for me, it was definitely a movie that I almost want to argue the cult following killed. But the reason it doesn't, for me personally, is because it really does showcase how well written the Pixar movies used to be.
Yeah.
They were sharp. They were smart. They didn't assume that you were stupid, and they were willing to go dark every once in a while. Like, there are some really freaky moments in this movie.
Yeah, it gets really dark. It's kind of jarring a little bit.
I'm going to pause though for a second,
Please,
because you said the way Pixar movies used to be. I agree. Back in the day, it was very consistent every movie. But keep in mind, last year we got Inside Out.
we did.
And I think I guess we liked Finding Dory more than you did, but.
No.
I think Pixar is not as consistent as they used to be, but I think when the magic is there,
It's there with a vengeance.
It's with lightning. Yeah,
Yeah.
Cars pun, Lightning McQueen.
Had to bring that up.
one of the worst series I think in the Pixar universe. But continue.
And maybe Cars 3 can salvage it. Who knows? But
Good one. Salvage. Yeah.
Because he's a tow truck.
Yeah,
I got
pick
it.
him up from the dump, man.
bad pun.
I
Bad
got
pun.
it.
Anyways. But no, I think the writing's really good here. A lot of really memorable characters. I'm sad that my favorite did not get a call back in Finding Dory, but that can't be helped.
Who's your favorite? Bruce the Shark?
My favorite character that they run into is actually the John Ratzenberger cameo.
Oh, yeah, he was a different character in Dory. That's true.
Really, the only big things I can say in the way of criticisms is I think there are points where it borders on episodic, and then when we get to the end, there's kind of a nice bookend, and then it goes a little too long. And I think it does sort of fizzle out from there. It's not bad, but it's sort of unnecessary, I would argue. And I'm with Joe on this one. I leave it with an A.
Well, I think, it can be episodic, obviously, because they're meeting different people throughout, but I would say that also would hold the interest of a child who maybe is a little bit restless because they're 4. Now you get this character, now you get this character. Towards the end is great because then they introduce the seagulls.
Yeah,
who are certainly one of the most famous characters in the franchise.
Indeed.
And then we also introduce the little dentist girl, the dentist daughter, who is sort of like a villain, quote unquote.
Basically.
So I think what makes it work in that regard is that everybody's interesting the more we go, and it makes sense with the story because they're obviously on a quest.
They are.
And he picks up Dory pretty quickly along the way, but everybody else isn't really going to go with them logically. So.
And I agree, but there are some points where some fit in nicely, others are sort of like, hey, what can we throw in their way that could be memorable and fun? How about a school of jellyfish?
Yeah.
Which makes for a great scene, but is also kind of episodic.
It is, but it's a great perilous scene.
It is.
And it's animated beautifully.
That was never a question.
So,
I can agree with
it
that.
works.
Yeah.
Well, it's the ocean. There's a lot of big stuff you'll run into randomly, I guess. Episodic could work. I don't know.
In a way.
They used to knock an A+ out for me pretty consistently.
Really?
Yeah. Bug's Life was the only one of the first 5 or 6 that wasn't an A+ for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was it, like B?
No, A-. No. They haven't had a B for me, I think, ever. Other than obvious. But I think even The Good Dinosaur I gave a B+.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah.
They have a few A-, Ratatouille's an A-, Brave's an A-.
Yeah, you say that they're usually in the A range for you.
Yeah, pretty consistently. WALL-E is an A+. They usually knock it out for me.
Yeah.
All right, well, my pick was Tangled, and this is the 50th film in the Disney animated classic line. It is basically Rapunzel, with Mandy Moore playing Rapunzel, Zachary Levi voicing Prince Charming Flynn Rider, and Donna Murphy as Mother Gothel. Now, I picked this movie because everyone falls all over Frozen, yet every single adult person I've asked, except one, which we'll get to, obviously, prefers this film over Frozen. And I agree that overall it's the better film. Now, there are no let it go moments, I'll admit that, but the songs are almost as memorable as in Frozen and consistent, and I think the story is better. I think it's funnier. I also think it's darker. And it has all of the Disney stamps of the 90s classics. Funny comic relief side characters, good action. I think the voice work is great, specifically from Murphy as Mother Gothel. And I would say she has the showstopper of the film with Mother Knows Best. And here's another example of a movie that, okay, you might know who Mandy Moore is, but it's not like she's an actress that you could really pick out her speaking voice, maybe the singing voice, but kind of like Frozen. In
a way.
Kristen Bell, okay, she's
been in things.
Popular actress, but I wouldn't say she's on the level of a John Goodman and Billy Crystal, for example.
No.
I think Disney's better about that than Pixar and DreamWorks, personally.
Agreed.
And I think they do it again here. Zachary Levi, again, people may have heard of him, maybe if they watched Chuck, but certainly not a household name, and I think it works for the film. Typically, we would go to Joe next, because he's going to talk about The Incredibles. But we have to hear the vitriol, the original C from Justin. I'm interested to see how it compares years later from that great.
The vitriol. I love the passionate word use.
Well, that's what it is when we talk about Tangled.
And I have to say, I have to do it. Possibly from Justin, maybe it's a very high C.
Okay.
Joe, the things if I could say what was running through my head right now. But anyways.
Well, I think of Ecto Cooler when I think of High C.
It's like, people like to drink, good for you.
Not bad at all, Dan. Not
Back
bad.
in stores now, everyone.
Invest. No. Well, I have a love-hate relationship with this one when it came out way back when, and I still kind of do. I guess I should start off with I don't want to hate this movie. And there are quite a few things I do actually like about it. The animation, I think, is absolutely gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
The voice work, I think, is absolutely top-notch. But where does it fall flat? And this is where Dan and I will have some fairly heavy disagreement. I think the song numbers are painfully paint-by-numbers Disney musical ad nauseum. It's like, okay, we need the introductory give the schedule ordeal to set the stage. Then we have to have the They're in Love song. Then we have to have the We're Not So Bad at the Bar song.
But how does that differ from Frozen? You open with the Ice Cutter song, which, by the way, is the worst song of about any Disney movie in the last 20 years.
We cut ice
We cut ice up. Cool. You have the In Love song with my favorite, other than Let It Go, which is Love is an Open Door. You have the kooky side character song with the trolls. Yeah, a little bit of a fixer-upper, which I also don't like.
I was going to say that's pretty low tier.
So, I mean, it hits all of the same notes as this one does.
But here's my counter-argument to that. Like, the intro song for Frozen, yes, it's a little bit out of place in terms of everything else, but it also finds a way to gently set the stage instead of, let's have Rapunzel sing about her entire day schedule.
It's a very popular song, Justin. I know you don't like
the
it.
First I've ever heard that. Like, whenever I hear somebody talk about Tangled, the first thing I usually hear is Now I've Seen the Light, which was...
But Now I've Seen the Light is good.
Yeah, which I think... I'm still shocked that was up for an Academy Award, but...
I'd say a song about her setting up her schedule could work for the plot, though. It's not like it's that out of place.
It's a catchy song. I will take that. I will listen to that song 100 times before I hear the dumb Ice song. Personally.
I think that song was
It's a good pop song.
You think it's pop?
What do you think it is? Heavy metal? Mandy Moore is a pop singer. Of course it's a pop song.
I wouldn't mind her doing metal.
What do you think it is? Most Disney songs are pop songs.
I mean, I would just file it under the whole musical category in general, but admittedly, you know far more about music than I will, so
I mean,
let you have that one.
Let It Go is a pop song. Most Disney, a Whole New World.
Well, what they usually do is it's a musical format, but they fit it into pop later by all the radio airplay, obviously.
Yeah.
Like Aladdin, Lion King,
obviously.
All that stuff. It fits into both pretty evenly.
Tarzan.
No, I mean, that's soft rock,
Phil Collins,
pop
right?
rock. That's Phil Collins.
I mean, for me, it always begs
pop.
the question of when does show tune enter pop? I don't know. Mother's Knows Best, aka generic villain song number 4.
Oh my god, it's such a showstopper.
Villain songs are always the best, man.
I mean, I know you like to rant about when musicals get overly theatrical. This is probably Exhibit A for me.
Musicals by nature are kind of theatrical, though, aren't they?
No. Like, there's like emoting in terms of like, okay, this would work great on stage. I'm not sure how well it will work in terms of a movie.
But it's animated, though. I think that's a bit different.
Right? You're harping words, Dan. Get it out.
I just, not to bring up Let It Go again, but what do you think that is? Like, Let It Go is a theatrical number.
I mean, potentially any song could be in theater.
Yeah.
It could be, but I also would say that the way the song is being sung, it's trying to be more like stage oriented than actual like I feel like Idina Menzel has a better idea of okay what will work what will work well vocally for film versus what will work well on Broadway.
I don't know how, because until this movie, all she ever did was Broadway.
Rent.
Which was on Broadway first, Justin.
Yeah.
And it was the same song in the movie, so I don't really count that in your argument. It's the same song.
Still acting and still performing. But alongside that, Zachary Levi's character arc, the first time round I saw it, I really, really didn't buy it, even remotely. He's arguably as selfish and egotistical as the villain, and enter fairy tale happily ever after.
But he's
and-
trying to save her from the tower, not hold her in there.
Yeah, there's a big difference.
No, but still.
He's egotistical, but that doesn't make him a, like,
Witch.
criminal. Yeah.
Well,
He
he is
is
a
the
criminal.
lieutenant.
But
He is, you're right, okay, you're right. That was a bad choice of words. I walked into that one.
Criminal, yeah.
Yeah. Alongside that, bringing back one of the worst things about the 90s, which was giving us an A sidekick and a B sidekick.
Mm-hmm.
Which both of the two, I think, have their moments in this, but becomes a little much. So for me, I would leave it with a C+.
C?
All
I
right.
see.
It was
I
a
told
high
you.
C.
I knew it.
All right, Joe.
Well, no, I've always liked Tangled. I mean, it's not one that I would like necessarily gravitate back to, but I think that the effect that it had was very similar to Frozen in terms of how popular it was. Like, it never quite reached that level.
Yeah, it came and went more than Frozen, for sure.
Well,
Definitely.
Frozen wouldn't go away, but when Tangled came out, it was pretty big.
Yes,
so
I
It was
agree.
huge.
So the
I agree.
comparison's still definitely there. I mean, I think I do prefer Tangled a little more because I maybe like the character a little bit more of Rapunzel. I like her story. I like her dynamic. I like the villain, actually, even though I guess she's more traditional. And I actually kind of like the fact that it is not necessarily breaking new ground, but it is essentially bringing back a lot of those classic fairy tale elements and also combining them with the 90s Renaissance. So, in a way, I
Yeah.
think for a lot of people it was kind of a refreshing reminder of the best of Disney, which...
Well, it had been a while since they did a princess movie.
Yeah, and that's fine, you know, and to do a traditional princess movie and make it rather untraditional in a lot of ways is fine. Kind of the first movie to really do that, I guess. Like, at least in animation. I think there might have been a couple before that.
Mm-hmm.
But, no, I mean, I really enjoyed it. I think the animation was good. I liked the voice acting as well. I liked the characters. I liked a lot of the comedy. I thought it was funny. The only thing about the movie that I really didn't particularly think was on the same level as Frozen was the music, actually. Which I think is a purely subjective thing anyway. Like, I thought the music was good, but I will confess that unlike a lot of Disney songs, there weren't as many memorable ones for me.
Standouts. Okay.
Like in the 90s where you usually had a couple. So I think musically it was good, but there weren't quite as many catchy ones. Like one or two perhaps, but that was the only real negative I could think of watching it.
Okay.
Honestly, it's like I don't know if it's quite up to that level. But that's it though.
Well, Frozen had a couple of really great songs. I think it also had some bad songs.
I think the Fixer Upper one was the worst one.
I
Yeah.
think the cutting of the ice was
See,
the worst
I
one.
think that the cutting the ice one definitely doesn't fit
It's-
the rest.
yeah.
It doesn't fit, but at least sets the stage.
It sets the stage for that character and the environment, and it's not bad in
a
and
bit
of
of a
itself.
fixer-upper just comes completely out of left field.
but are you going to say that her talking about what she does all day does not set the stage?
I think it definitely does.
I know you don't like the song, but you can't say it doesn't set the stage.
I think it works for the plot.
To varying degrees, but
I think it pretty solidly sets up what's
Definitely
happening in her
knows
life.
what it's doing. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Great. It's a C plus, right?
I beg your pardon.
You're great.
Oh, my grade is an A.
Okay.
Oh, did I not say it? Yeah, Tangled's an A for me.
Yeah, and I'm an A as well.
Oh,
So we're in agreement.
what a great movie.
I really am fine with it. I don't.
Really, I mean, in all honesty, I've asked probably dozens of people because Frozen Fever, not the short, the actual Fever, was so annoying
It was bad.
a year later.
Yeah, people were
that,
still talking about it. Yeah.
I constantly ask people, not so much these days, but a year ago, isn't Tangled a better movie? And all of them say yes. I mean, adults. Now, kids love Frozen. I get it. That's fine. But I think from a filmmaker standpoint, I think most people prefer Tangled. Song-wise, maybe not so much.
I think they're pretty close, honestly.
But-
I don't think there's like this great divide either way.
I also gave Frozen an A.
I mean, I think Frozen's very good too.
Yeah.
But it just got annoying.
All right, well, Joe, we're going to talk about The Incredibles with you.
Yes. Well, The Incredibles is the 2004 animated superhero film from Pixar following Nemo, actually, and directed by Brad Bird. This film follows a family of superheroes who are forced to hide their powers and live a quiet suburban life. Mr. Incredible's desire to help people eventually draws the entire family into a battle with a villain with plans involving a killer robot. Now, this is obviously one of my favorite Pixar movies, and I think we all know why. But it's not just because it's a superhero film. It's the fact that it combines some classic ideas from the modern age of comics, like heroes having to deal with real life issues and not always being accepted, like in Watchmen or The Dark Knight Returns or most of X-Men, really. But also having this classic 1950s feeling, which I always enjoyed too in terms of old sci-fi. I think it's got some great comedy. I think they do the family dynamic well. And it has a good sense of what makes a solid superhero movie in the traditional sense. I mean, it really does. The only issue that I've ever really had with it is that perhaps it brings in the family a little too late, as it is more Mr. Incredible story throughout much of the film. But on the whole, I think it's a great Pixar movie. You know, maybe not perfect, but pretty darn close, much like Nemo. It's an A for me.
Justin?
I have to say, I think it's amazing that after all this time, not only has it broken new ground, but it's been wildly influential on the current influx of how many superhero movies we get and the tropes and the things that are coming out. Like, even the most minute details that I'll see in like a random superhero movie, I'll be like, The Incredibles kind of did that, and I think it's
Like when he strangles that woman.
Oh yes,
Straight out of
Sexist,
X-Men.
Mr. Incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, I was going to say Robert Downey Jr. because the poor guy cannot get through a movie without getting throat grabbed, but no, just finding ways to interject social commentary, trying to focus on his private life, and trying to get back into a dying lifestyle, but yet finding a way to do it that's accessible and fun for kids without compromising anything. And the villain actually has a formidable motive instead of very bad because evil.
Like most Marvel movies.
Yes. Take notes, MCU. Oh, wait, you did. But no, I mean, this is great cast, great action, first PG one, well deserved. But
Though not as dark as Nemo. We didn't have like the addiction with the sharks. I think.
Not nearly, yeah.
No.
Yes.
But as we noted, at least a body count of 40.
Oh, yeah, a lot of brutal deaths though, for sure. That was good.
Yeah. But really solid family dynamic. I thoroughly loved it. More compelling evidence than ever before that we need a sequel ASAP.
Surprising that took so long, honestly.
Well, I mean, Dory took 13 years.
I suppose. But Cars
It's
2
coming.
took like what?
It
2?
is.
3?
Well, Cars 2 sucks, and it,
Hey.
when they take 13 years to do something,
Hopefully
it's good.
That's true.
You
I would
know?
hope. But,
Hopefully, yeah.
Well, I was referring to Dory, but
I know.
Yeah.
But no, this was a bold new addition to the Pixar repertoire. I think it still holds up as it did way back when. It's an A+.
Right?
yeah, it's funny. This came out at a time when really the only big blockbuster superhero movies were a couple of X-Men movies, a couple of Spider-Man movies. Everything else was more way aimed at adults, like Blade and that
Yeah.
kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so now, finally, we had this, animated property that was for kids, really, but that adults were like, oh, well, this is like the comic books I read growing up. This is like Spider-Man, and all that stuff. It's like Batman, the animated series, et cetera, et cetera. And I think the voice acting is great. We didn't really mention them, but Craig T. Nelson plays Mr. Incredible. You've got Holly Hunter, of course, as the wife, Elastigirl, and then Frozone, Sam Jackson in a classic role.
Can't go wrong with Super Suit.
Why he's not gotten a short or a spin-off,
Yeah.
I'm not
Just
quite
why?
sure, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, everything pretty much works about this movie. I do agree, Joe, that for a while it's the Mr. Incredible show.
Definitely. Which I don't mind.
It is, but it's about his legacy.
Okay,
Yeah.
but it's also about how they're a family unit.
Yeah, which I
And
think
we-
one ties into the other rather nicely.
It does. No, it does. It ties in very nicely. It may be more prevalent. I might have liked to have seen. That was worded oddly, but you get my point. Edna is obviously great. I'm surprised she has not gotten a short.
Definitely.
They really need to revisit some of these older Pixar movies for shorts.
Definitely.
Because in this day and age, I mean, if you have 5 Toy Story shorts,
Yeah.
you could throw an Incredible short into the mix.
Yeah.
I think. But
But you don't like the baby.
I hate the baby. Jack stinks. And really, that is a part where I think the animation is not great, is him and the babysitter. They're just not drawn very well. And, keep in mind, this was Pixar's first
Major
people
human.
movie.
Yeah.
There were a few human characters in Toy Story. Very little in any of their other movies. I mean, Boo was about the biggest you would get with the monsters.
Still
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah, but she still looks really awful animation-wise. So, honestly, if we're going to criticize Meet the Robinsons for its animation, I don't think the animation for this, certainly with the people, is that compelling. Now, the city scenes and the things and the suits, sure. But other than that, maybe not. But I leave it with an A. It's not on the A+ level as many, but it's still an excellent film.
Yeah.
I know Pixar used to have a lot of trouble with animating
People?
people characters. It's never really bothered me that much. I can't even really tell you why. Like, with the exception of that one short that we watched a long time ago when they were obviously just film students.
Sid really bothers me in Toy Story.
Honestly,
Toy Story's an excellent movie, but Sid looks awful.
the worst thing actually for me is probably just in Toy Story with, a couple things like the baby.
And the baby too.
She's a monster.
Right.
Sid's okay, Andy's okay, but actually, their worst is the dog. He looks very stiff.
Yeah, the dog's weird.
Very, very stiff. But really, in terms of like the living stuff, I think The Incredibles look pretty good. I think they were definitely aiming for more cartoony, which is why it doesn't look that jarring or anything. But you could tell that they still hadn't quite perfected people yet.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, well, great movies all around. Yet again, Disney bringing it home.
As usual.
And they've done a lot of good ones this year with both Zootopia and Finding Dory in the animated department. So, that's it. So thanks for listening to our monthly special here, and we'll see you next time.